Okay, that's fine, Mataji. That's fine. Yeah, Prabhuji, you can start with invocation. Thank you.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 8, verse 37.
Hare Krishna, just want to check if you can hear me.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, we can hear you. Yes. Okay.
Hare Krishna, can you hear me?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes,
Hare
Prabhu.
Krishna.
Okay. Apiyadyanastvam svakrite hita prabho jahasasi svisuhrito anujivina yasham nachanyad bhavata padam puja parayanam rajasu yojitam hasam.
O my Lord, you have executed all duties yourself. Are you leaving us today? Though we are completely dependent on your mercy and have no one else to protect us. Now, when all kings are at enmity with us,
Evayam namarupabhyam yatubhih svapadandava bhavato darshanam yarhi ishikanam iveshitam.
as the name and fame of a particular body is finished with the disappearance of the living spirit, similarly, if you do not look upon us, all our fame and activities, along with the Pandavas and Yadus, will end at once.
Niyam shobhishyate tatra yatyedanyam gadadhara tatpader ankita bhati salakshana vilakshitaihi.
O Gadadhar, Krishna, our kingdom is now being marked by the impressions of your feet, and therefore appears beautiful. But when you leave, it will no longer be so.
Ime jana pada svridha supakvo shadhi virudha vanadrinadi udanvanto hi edhante tava vikshatihi.
All these cities and villages are flourishing in all respects because the herbs and grains are in abundance. The trees are full of fruits, the rivers are flowing, the hills are full of minerals, and the oceans full of wealth. And this is all due to your glancing over them.
Adahai vishvesha vishvatman vishvamarte svake me sneha pasham imam chindi dridham pandu shuvrishnisho.
O Lord of the universe, soul of the universe, O personality of the form of the universe, please, therefore, sever my tie of affection for my kinsmen, the Pandavas and Vrishinis.
Vayimenu vishaya matir madhu pate sakrit pratim udvahata tadha gangangham udanvate.
O Lord of Madhu, as the Ganges forever flows to the sea without hindrance, let my attraction be constantly drawn unto you without being diverted to anyone else.
Shri Krishna Krishna Sakha Vrishnere Shabhavani Drog Rajanya Vamshatahana Napavargadriya Govinda Godvija Surarte Haravatara Nageshwara Kila Guru Bhagavan Namaste.
O Krishna, O friend of Arjuna, O chief amongst descendants of Vrishni. You are the destroyer of those political parties which are disturbing elements on this earth. Your prowess never deteriorates. You are the proprietor of the transcendental abode, and you descend to relieve the distresses of the cows, the Brahmins, and the devotees. You possess all mystic powers, and you are the preceptor of the entire universe. You are the Almighty God, and I offer you my respectful obeisances.
Sutavacham Prithayatham Kalapadai Parinuta Kilodaya Mandam Jahasa Vaikunto Mahayan Eva Mayaya.
Suta Goswami said, Lord, thus hearing the prayers of Kuntidev composed in choice words for his glorification, mildly smiled. That smile was as enchanting as his mystic power.
Tambadham ityo pamantriya pravishya gajasahvayam Sriyastasva puram yasyan premnaragya nivarita.
Please scroll up. Thus accepting the prayers of Srimati Kunti Devi, the Lord subsequently informed other ladies of his departure by entering the palace of Hastinapur. But upon preparing to leave, he was stopped by King Yudhishthira, who implored him lovingly.
Vyasadyer Ishvare Hagyai Krishnena Dbhuta Karmana Prabodhito Apiti Hasair Nabudhyata Shacharpitaha.
King Yudhishthira, who was much aggrieved, could not be convinced, despite instructions by great sages headed by Vyasa and the Lord Krishna himself, the performer of superhuman feats, and despite all historical evidence.
Aharacha Dharma Sutar Chintayan Suhridam Vadham Prakriti Natmana Vipra Sneha Mahavasham Gata.
King Yudhishthira, son of Dharma, overwhelmed by the death of his friends, was aggrieved just like a common materialistic man. O sages, thus deluded by affection, he began to speak.
Aho me pashyata gyanam hridirudham duratmana parak yasyaiva dehasya bhavyo me akshuhi nirhata.
King Yudhishthira said, O my Lord, I am the most sinful man. Just see my heart, which is full of ignorance. This body, which is ultimately meant for others, has killed many, many phalanxes of men.
Baladvicha sahrin mitra pitrim bharatri guru droha namesya nirayan moksha ye ate varshaya yutayutaihi.
I have killed many boys, brahmanas, well-wishers, friends, parents, preceptors, and brothers. Though I live millions of years, I will not be relieved from the hell that awaits me for all these sins.
Nainoragya praja bhartor dharmayudhe vadhod visham iti mena tu bodhaya kalpate shasanam vacham.
There is no sin for a king who kills for the right cause, who is engaged in maintaining his citizens. But this injunction is not applicable to me.
Strinam adhata bandhunam drohoyo aso ihodhita कर्माभिर्गृहमेधियाय नाहं kalpo vyapohitum.
I have killed many friends of women, and I have thus caused enmity to such an extent that it is not possible to undo it by material welfare.
Yadaha pankena pankambha suraya va surakritam putahatyam tadhaivaikam na yagir marshitum arhate.
As it is not possible to filter muddy water through mud, or purify a wine-stained pot with wine, it is not possible to counteract the killing of men by sacrificing animals. Thank you.
Jai, thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Padavanjarola Prabhu. That's a lovely name. And is that your son, Deshobit? Very well recited. Thank you, both of you. So welcome to today's chat. Today's chat is actually going to be a summary of Canto 1, Chapter 8, the prayers of Lord Kunti, the prayers of Kunti Devi. So just quickly recite the invocation prayers. Om Jnana Timrandasya Jnana Jana Shalakaya Chakshurmalitam Yena Tasme Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tatati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakabalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatam Tam Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Visha Kavitam Sham He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhana Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna everyone, welcome to today's class of chat. My name is Krishna Govindadas. Kindly ask for the blessings of my spiritual master, Bhakti Charu Swami. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pishtaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Charu Swami Tinamine Antu Ajagat Guru Srila Prabhupada. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pishtaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tinamine Namaste Saraswati Devam Gauravani Pajayane Nirvishesa Sunyavadi Pashyata Disatarine. Kindly ask also for your blessings who are listening to this class, so that I may speak on the wonderful wisdoms of Krishna and the Pandavas. So I'm just going to share you a screen. I just want to check. Can you see that okay, everyone?
Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah, okay, great. So this is from Bhagavad Subhadini. Sorry, just get it focus. Yep. So this is a beautiful companion to all the Srimad Bhagavatam, and it gives you a sort of synopsis and a summary of all the topics of each of the chapters of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And it goes through each of the verse by verse by giving a simple explanation of the purpose behind the verse itself. So I may just ask the devotee to just be on standby to recite some of the prayers, if that's okay, when we go through them. So on this summary, I'm actually going to be reading a lot of it from this particular document itself, which I scanned in, so the quality is not 100%, which is scanned in through, how do you call it, through a mobile phone and just okay. So basically, there's about 52 verses in this particular chapter, Canto 1, Chapter 8, prayers by Queen Kunti and Maharaj Parikshit saved. So you can see that it's actually divided into 4 sections, and then again into, actually, maybe I should be able to do this. And then again into, I think, about 9 sections. So the first section is actually the Pandavas offering water, the bathing in the Ganges. Then unto everyone is agreed by Krishna, the sages pacify the Pandavas because of the battle of Kurukshetra. So many millions of people have died on both sides of the armies, Pandavas and the Kauravas. Then verses 5 to 6, Krishna established Yudhishthira's glories and he asked him to perform the actual Ashmaveda Yagya. Then 7 to 10, as Lord Krishna is about to depart to go back to Dwarka, Uttara, who is the actual wife of Abhimanyu, the daughter-in-law of Arjuna, she comes running to Krishna, asking for protection. And Lord Krishna actually understood, because he's in the heart of every living entity, understood what Uttara was crying for. And then it goes on to 11 and 14, verse 11 to 14, Lord Krishna counteracts the Brahmastra, which was sent by Ashwatthama to kill the child within Uttara's womb. Then 15 to 17, the Lord's inconceivable power of protection. We'll briefly discuss that later on. And then after that, verses 45, Yudhishthira implores to Krishna as he departs. And then 46 to 47, Yudhishthira couldn't be convinced by anyone because he's grieving so much. He's actually feeling guilty that so many millions of innocent people had been killed. He thought that he was actually doing a justified cause, but in the end, he realized that maybe it wasn't the right thing to do because he was doing it out of pride, just to get some kingdom back to under his lineage. Then afterwards, verses 48 to 52, Maharaj Yudhishthira is lamenting. So we'll just try and go through verse by verse some of these wonderful discussions. I just want to check. Could you see that okay?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay. So verse 1 to 2, the Pandavas along with Draupadi, they go to the Ganges, they offered water to the departed souls. This is an important ceremony that Krishna is actually asking all the Pandavas to actually go to the Ganges, offer water for all the departed souls. It's allowing them to be purified and also to purify themselves as well by bathing in the holy Ganges, which is considered to be pure. And also when you hear the story of Krishna when he's leaving Vrindavan for Mathura with Krura, he's actually bathing in the rivers in an offering, an oblation to his ancestors. So verse 3 and 4, the Pandavas, Draupadi, Kunti and Gandhari are overwhelmed with grief. Once again, they were grieving because of the loss of their dear loved ones. There's so much losses of millions of people on both sides of the armies. Lord Krishna and the sages are pacified by them by citing the stringent laws of time, Kalashya, Gatim, acting upon all living entities which cannot be counteracted. Na pratikriyam. Then 5 to 17, this is when Lord Krishna actually saves Maharaj Parikshit in the womb of Mother Uttara. So verses 5 and 6, Krishna establishes Yudhishthira's glories. Verse 5, by Lord Krishna's grace, Yudhishthira Ajatasattu recovered his kingdom after killing the cunning Duryodhana and his associates. His lives were diminished because of the rough handling of Draupadi's hair. So can you imagine this war that took place could have been avoided if Duryodhana hadn't been so envious of his cousins. He tried in so many ways to destroy their lives, to destroy their family. They humiliated Draupadi in the arena of all the assembled kings. And because of that, many, like Bhishma Devi, made a vow that he will destroy Dushashan, he will destroy Duryodhana for causing so much humiliation to Draupadi. But Yudhishthira Maharaj, he also lost the gambling match not only once but twice, and they were actually been sent away in exile for 12 years, then one further year incognito as well. So for somebody who had all the wealth in the world, who was supposed to be the next person on the throne, everything taken away, it's also like, everything is done by the will of the Supreme Lord. It wasn't just by chance that all these things happen. It's also like a lesson to all of us that you can have so much wealth in your life, but unfortunately it can be all taken away. Of course, the Pandavas were pure devotees of the Lord, and they were always protected by Lord Krishna at all times. Queen Kuti was always protected by Lord Krishna. But at the same time, they were suffering. It's not that they had karmic reactions whatsoever, but because of the pure situation, they were able to contain the ability to be righteous at all times, despite the cheating, despite the different times that Duryodhana tried to kill them. Still, the Pandavas tried to ensure that they were not actually causing grief to anybody else for any particular reason that would break the religious practice, the code of conduct. Verse 6, Lord Krishna then asks Yudhishthira to perform the horse sacrifices Ashvamedha, and this causes fame to spread like Indra. So Yudhishthira Maharaj, after killing the Kauravas and Duryodhana, he was the emperor of the world, but he felt very guilty, as later on he explains in the chapter that he felt that all these people died because of his own doing. And even if he did all this Ashvamedha Yagya, it would not be enough to actually purify all the sinful reactions for killing all these people. So verses 7 to 10, Uttara cries out for help to Lord Krishna. Lord Shri Krishna then prepared for this departure for Dwarka. After exchanging greetings with the Brahmanas and Pandavas, he sat on a chariot. Uttara then came running towards him in fear and addressed him. Then he says, she actually recites a beautiful verse. Does anybody have the Srimad Bhagavatam in front of them? So I don't have to swap over. If they can read verse number 9. No? Nobody? Okay. Okay, this is a beautiful verse by Uttara. Uttara vacha pahi pahi ma yogin deva deva jagapate nanyantvad abhayam pasye yatra mrityu parasparam. So she says the word pahi pahi twice. Does anybody know what pahi means?
Protect.
Yes, thank you. Protect. Please protect me. Please protect me. So she asks Lord Krishna, please protect me, protect me. Protect my son. A fiery iron arrow is coming towards me fast. Let it burn me personally, but let it not kill the embryo within the womb. So she's actually telling Krishna, please protect me. And Krishna, the Supreme Lord of all, his main duty is to protect his devotees. So from that verse, Yada Yada Dharmasya Klani Bhavati Bharata Atuta Nama Dharmasya Tadatmanam Srijamiham. Whenever and wherever there's a decline in religious practice or disorder, Bharata, the predominant rise of a religion, at that time I descend myself. And then further on in the verse afterwards, in order to re-establish the principles of religion, beg your pardon, to deliver the pious and to re-establish the principles of religion, I appear as myself millennium after millennium. So it's first and foremost duty for Krishna is to deliver the pious. So that is to deliver his devotees. So then Lord Krishna counteracts the Brahmastra, verses 11 to 14, 11 to 12, Krishna understood that Ashwatthama had released one or so many Brahmastras. Seeing the glaring Brahmastras coming towards them, the Pandavas took up their weapons. So here there's a little subnote. it says that Ashwatthama released multiple Brahmastras to kill the Pandavas and the only grandson inside Uttara's womb. So prior to that, he actually killed the 5 sons of Draupadi, a heinous crime, and they managed to capture him. Arjuna managed to capture him, and they were about to kill him. Bhima was really determined to kill Ashwatthama for killing his sons, or the sons of the Pandavas. But there was a feeling of compassion by Draupadi. Draupadi, realizing that her sons had been killed, and how much she was lamenting, also realized that she didn't want Ashwatthama's mother to be in that same situation if Ashwatthama was killed. So out of compassion, out of humility, out of feelings for Ashwatthama's mother, she told Bhima not to kill Ashwatthama. Even though Arjuna was ready to kill Ashwatthama, he was confused what to do. Then Krishna told him, do what you must do. So Arjuna, what he did, he actually didn't actually kill Ashwatthama, he actually cut his hair off and took the crown jewel of his head. In other words, it was actually causing him to lose all his superior ability to do anything within his own nature as a guru, as his guru of the sun. Sorry, as the son of a guru. His guru, his spiritual master, his father was Dronacharya. So because of this heinous crime, it was also considered to be as good as death, because as Krishna says, dishonor is worse than death. So because of this heinous crime, there was a great dishonor in himself. It was like a cowardice sort of act. It was considered to be as good as dead as well. Okay. Okay, verses 13 to 14, Krishna then took up his Siddhashandas to protect the Pandavas. His unalloyed devotees, despite having vowed not to use weapons, Lord Krishna, who is Yogeshwara and Paramatma, then covered Uttara's embryo by his personal Svaya Mayaya. So the next verses, 15 to 16, the irresistible amalgam and uncounteractable apratikriya Brahmastra was neutralized and foiled by the strength of Vishnu, Lord Krishna. So I don't know if you remember, in one of the classes I took, I mentioned there was 3 types of Brahmastras. I don't know if anybody would remember that, but just to save a bit of time, I just wrote it down again because I had to remind myself as well. So there's 3 types of Brahmastra. Brahmastra is the weapon created by Lord Brahma. The first one is Brahma Shira, and this comes from the top of Lord Brahma's 5th head. Although we recognize that Lord Brahma has 4 heads, but according to this particular description of Brahma Shira, it's actually the weapon that comes from the top of Lord Brahma's 5th head. The next one is Brahmananda, which consists of the bones of Lord Brahma. And this particular Brahmananda is so powerful, it is considered to be the most powerful weapon. It can only counteract it by the bones of Lord Brahma as well. And it's actually also the same weapon that you could use to countermeasure any Brahmastras that are attacked by another person. And the third one is the Pashupatastra. The Pashupatastra is actually a great weapon. It's actually used by Lord Shiva himself. So those are the 3 Brahmastras. I'm sure there must be many, many other Brahmastras as well, but these are the 3 main ones. Okay, verse number 16. Don't consider this so surprising. Mamamsta hiyata dascharyam. For Lord Krishna, who is infallible, unborn, and full of wonderful powers, sarvashcharyam and Dye Achyute, by his Maya, he creates, maintains, and allies the universe. Verse 17, then it concludes by, thus said by Krishna, the chaste and devoted Kunti Devi, the Pandavas, and Draupadi addressed Lord Krishna as follows. So verse 18 to 44. Number 18 is a beautiful verse. Does anybody have the Srimad Bhagavatam in front of them? if they want to read verse 18. Okay. Kanti vacha namasya purusham tvadyam ishwaram prakriti param alakshyam sava bhutanam anta bahi avishtatam. Shrimati Kunti said, O Krishna, I offer my obeisances unto you because you are the original personality and are unaffected by the qualities of the material world. You are existent both within and without everything, yet you are invisible to all. So these are the first prayers by Kunti Devi to Lord Krishna. Then verse number 19, it gives you a little breakdown of each line, the translation. I won't repeat all of it. The Sanskrit, just for now, I'll just repeat the English translation. Being beyond the range of limited sense perception, you are eternally irreproachable factor, covered by the curtain of deluding energy. You are invisible to the foolish observer, exactly as an actor dressed as a player is not recognized. Okay, now I'm just going to go into the next page. And some really beautiful verses here that Queen Kunti recites to Lord Krishna. So verse 20 reflects on how can a woman know you perfectly? You descend to propagate bhakti. You are the object of bhakti. Amongst the advanced transcendentalists, Paramahamsanam, great philosophers, Muninam, and liberated sages, Amala Atmaram. So she's actually saying about the qualities of a woman, how would they actually know you perfectly? And it describes all the different types of personalities who can understand Krishna, who are Paramahamsas. And then she goes on to say how fortunate she is to receive reciprocation. So in this particular verse, this is such a beautiful verse. The next two verses, you probably hear Gopal Prabhu recite these two verses just before he starts the Bhagavatam class. Once again, if anybody does have the Srimad Bhagavatams, so to give an opportunity to everyone to read, the verse reads, Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namah. Let me therefore offer my respectful obeisances unto the Lord, who has become the son of Vasudeva, the pleasure of Devaki, the boy of Nanda, and the other coward men of Vrindavan, and the livener of the cows and the senses. And this next verse is such a beautiful verse as well. Namaha Pankaja Nabaya, Namaha Pankaja Maline, Namaha Pankaja Netraya, Namaste Pankajangraye. My respectful obeisances are unto you, O Lord, whose abdomen is marked with depression like a lotus flower, who are always decorated with garlands of lotus flowers, whose glance is as cool as the lotus, and whose feet are engraved with lotuses. So I'm not sure if you remember on that particular day when I read that verse, which was probably about a month ago, I actually showed the lotus feet of Lord Krishna and all the markings of Lord Krishna that reflect the qualities or the items that are represented by Lord Krishna himself. And also she mentions how fortunate she is that she can see the beautiful form of the Lord. So now, verse 23 to 24. So here, in this particular verse, she actually describes all the different activities that were actually imposed or invoked on them by the Kauravas trying to kill him in some form or another. Vishwan was a poison cake that they gave to them, but somehow or another they survived the poisonous cake. Mahagane, there was a great fire. They were actually given a beautiful house, but very cunningly and very deceivingly, they built a house out of a particular material, like a wax material that could burn very easily. And it so happened when they were living in there, they set the whole house or the palace on fire. But just prior to that, somebody informed them that there was a trap door that they could hide, and through the tunnel they could escape themselves. And when they did escape, while the whole palace was on fire, they lived in incognito for a period of time. They were also attacked by cannibals. In this case, Hidimba was a great monster, and he tried to attack the Pandavas. But Bhimadev, he actually killed Hidimba. But at the same time, Hidimba's daughter, Hidimbi, was very, very flattered by Bhima, by his bravery, and he wanted to marry him. And then they had a son called, what was Bhima and Hidimbi's son called?
Gatodagach.
Well done. Thank you, Krishna Vanimataji. And then in the vicious assembly of gambling match, Asat Sabya, where they were humiliated, they lost, they were cheated by the evil Shakuni, not only once, but twice. But it's very confusing. How is it possible that Yudhishthira Maharaj actually went again to the gambling match, but because he was invited and the code of conduct as a Kshatriya, you must not reject it, otherwise it's a form of cowardice, a form of rejection, a form of weakness. So he accepted that gambling match. And while they were in exile, they were also suffering as well. They were put into so much difficulties, calamities, living in incognito for so many years as well, away from the Kauravas. Does anybody know how many years they actually went in exile? I think I may have mentioned it earlier.
12 years and 1 year in incognito. So 13 years.
Thank you, Krishna Vanimataji again.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Hope I'm right. Hare
And then, yeah, that's what I understand as well. 12 years, similar to Lord Ram. Lord Ram, I believe he was in exile for 13 years. So 12 years they were in exile, and the 13th year they were in incognito. So if by any chance they were spotted by any of the Kaurava army, then they would have to be in exile for another 12 years. Such a ruthless person, Duryodhana was. Okay. Midyaneka Maharatastra, weapons of great fighters in many battles. So there were many fighters within the battle who actually were trying to attack the Pandavas, even though they were supposed to be family members, still they attacked the Pandavas. And finally, Drona Astratas, which we mentioned earlier on, when Ashwatthama released the Brahmastra to kill the Pandavas and also to kill Parikshit, who was in the womb of Mother Uttara. Okay, now this is another beautiful verse. Verse number 25. By Queen Kotita, Lord Krishna, Vipada Shatutara, Vipada Shatutaha Shashvat Tatra Jagat Guru Bhavato Darshanam Yatsyayat Apuna Bhava Darshanam. I wish that all those calamities would happen again and again, so that we could see you again and again. For seeing you means that we will no longer see repeated birth and death. So earlier on, when I was mentioning all the difficulties that they faced, the poison cave, the palace which were burnt by a fire, the Brahmastra attacking the Pandavas. Now, can you imagine if anything like that happened to any of us? You know, we don't want any of those calamities to happen to us at all. We just want to be protected all the time. But Queen Kunti Devi, she is saying, let these calamities happen again and again. So because of these calamities, they were able to remember Krishna. We were able to see his personally because they knew that Krishna will always protect them. So they were just completely dependent on Lord Krishna all the time. And even sometimes when we see devotees, or different types of devotees who pray to Lord Krishna, there's the ones who pray to Lord Krishna because of distress, those who pray for some wealth, some who are inquisitive, those who want to learn more about the absolute truth. But really the devotees are beyond any of those material sort of objectives. They just want to worship the Supreme Lord because they understand He is the Supreme Lord. He is the protector of everyone, both the enemies and His friends. And in that verse in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, I envy no one, I am equal to all, I am partial to none. But whosoever renders service unto me in devotion is a friend, is in me, and I am a friend to him. So it's not that Krishna is very partial. It actually mentions that if somebody's trying to kill you, no one can kill you. No one, if somebody's trying to kill you and Krishna wants to save you, there's nobody in this world who can actually kill you at all, because Krishna will always protect you. But if Krishna wants to kill somebody, there's nobody in the world who can save that particular person, because there's nobody who can defeat Krishna, nobody could counteract Krishna at all. Krishna is completely independent of anybody. Any weapons cannot destroy him at all. Okay. Verse number 26. So it's actually Queen Kunti's mentioned about the different types of devotees who can actually approach the Lord. So in this case, she's actually mentioned those with a lot of pride, those of high birth, those who are very opulent, very highly educational, or have physical beauty. They cannot really directly approach the Lord. They may have some temporary sort of conditionings that they may want to pray to the Supreme Lord, but they won't be able to understand fully who the Lord is. The reason being is because they have a high opulence, they may have a royal family, they have physical attractiveness. Because of their conditioning, they feel that they are superior to other people, they're superior to Krishna. They, in some cases, they become envious of the Supreme Lord because the Supreme Lord is full of opulence, strength, knowledge, wisdom, and so forth. But one who can see Krishna through sincere feeling, who is materially exhausted, who completely reject the material, I suppose, the material sense gratification, they want to completely surrender unto the Supreme Lord. Only then, through sincerity and through faith, can they approach the Supreme Lord. So the Lord's reciprocation with the Krishna Bhaktas and others. So Krishna mentions, or rather it's mentioned that those who are Kinchana Vitaya, those who are unalloyed devotees, they can actually approach Krishna through prema. With Nivritta Guna Vrittaye, devotees do not have wealth arising from material modes, but they have the Lord, who is devoid of all material enjoyment as their property. So Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is married to millions and millions of Lakshmi Devis, who is the goddess of wealth, goddess of prosperity, opulence, happiness, joyfulness. So when you have Krishna, there's no need for any material enjoyment. There's no need for material objects or gratification. Krishna provides everything in the form of bhakti. Atmaramaya, self-satisfied. The Supreme Lord is completely satisfied. He is not interested in the non-devotees. Neither is he interested in anything that they want to give to him, because there may be a particularly a business sort of a reciprocation with the Lord. My dear Lord, if I give you this donation, if I give you this, please reciprocate by giving me this in return. So Prabhupada sometimes classifies this as a business activity with the Supreme Lord. Shantaya, peaceful. Even if the devotees sometimes offend him, the Lord remains peaceful and forgives them. So there is a particular verse in the Bhagavad Gita, even if one commits a most abominable action, he is considered a saintly person because he is properly situated in his determination. So even though somebody may offend the Supreme Lord, the Supreme Lord will certainly be very merciful and forgive that particular person. But of course, if a person keeps offending again and again and again for some, or rather the basis of religious context, then of course he is condemned. And neither does Krishna give mercy to those who offend his devotees, because he specifically says, those who say that they are my devotees are not my devotees, but those who are devotees of my devotees are actually my devotees. So he puts a lot of emphasis on his devotees. He doesn't like any of his devotees to be offended in what form, shape, or activities whatsoever. Kaivalya Pataye is the master of the monasts. The Lord helps the devotees who desire liberation. So in one way, although the devotees do not desire liberation at all, but if they have complete faith in the Lord, He gives them that opportunity to give them what they desire. The desire of most devotees is just to be the servant of the Lord, whereas the Mayavadis or impersonalists, they want liberation only to be within the external energy of the Supreme Lord or the nirvana state of the Supreme Lord. But of course, Srila Prabhupada mentions that even though they may feel happiness and bliss, but that is very temporary, because once they consume all their piety, their spiritual opportunity to be within the Brahmajyoti, they would have to come down into the material world and start again all over again from the lower species of life and work all the way to the top species of life, to demigod, etc. Then verse number 28, you are Kala, or eternal time. Thus you destroy those who offend devotees. The Supreme Controller, Isha, without beginning and end, Anadi Nidanam, all pervasive, Vibhum, equal to all, Samam, and an abode of conflicting qualities, Kalihi, your acts are bewildering. So there's a lot of information in there. From the Bhagavad Gita, once again, Krishna mentions, time I am the great destroyer of the worlds, and I've come here to destroy everyone. So he actually mentions that in the form of time, one of his external energies, he is the cause of destruction and annihilation of this material manifestation. So ultimately, everything that exists will eventually be put into a stage where they're completely destroyed at the time of annihilation. Okay. So verses 29 to 31, the mysterious nature. I was just checking on the time. 29, your pastimes appearing as a human are bewildering, vidambaram, and not understood by anyone. You have no objects of favor or envy, yet people imagine you to be partial. So the verse which I mentioned earlier on, I envy no one, I am equal to all, I am partial to none. And this is related to this particular verse as well. So the example given here in the purport, Prabhupada, the sun gives the same light to everyone. But seems to be partial because to the sunstone. 2, it is indifferent to the blind people. Gives joy to the Chakravika birds. And 4, is harmful to the thieves and owls. So this is more or less self-explanatory. However, the cause of the difference is the qualities of the specific objects that comes in contact with the sun. So there's opportunities to accept the sun, appreciate the sun, but at the same time, many people don't appreciate the sun or hide away or cover themselves up. So the same way the Supreme Lord, everybody has an opportunity to come and approach the Supreme Lord. But those who are envious, those who are very have hatred or create enmity to the Supreme Lord, they do not appreciate the Supreme Lord, and they see him as an enemy and want to find any ways to destroy the Supreme Lord, the spiritual activities of the devotees, and even Dharma itself. They will like to destroy it. In the case of great demons like Hiranyakashipu, Hiranyayaksha, Kamsa, Ravana, an embodiment of anger, lust, and greed. Verse number 30. Although you are unborn, Aja, and inactive, Akurtu, you take birth and perform activities in the forms of animals, man, and aquatics. This is very bewildering. And it recites that particular verse. Janma kama cha vishvatanam ajashaya kartu atmanaha dirya nirshu yadashu tadanchata vidambanam. Of course, it is bewildering, O soul of the universe, that you work, though you are inactive, and that you take birth, though you are the vital force and the unborn. you yourself descend amongst animals, men, sages, and aquatics. Verily, this is very bewildering. So as you can see from the 10 avatars, Krishna comes in different forms of different shapes or species of life. He comes as Matsya, as a fish. He comes as Kurma, as a tortoise. He comes as Bora, as Lord Varahadev. So this is quite bewildering sometimes to many people who do not understand the name, form, qualities, and pastimes of the Supreme Lord. Even when he descends as a human form, it is very bewildering. And once again, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna, fools deride me when I descend in this human form of life. They do not know me to be the Supreme Lord of all that be. Because they are covered with illusion, they're covered with ignorance, they're covered by different anarthas, envy, pride, illusion. They do not fully understand the Supreme Lord. And even though they may see somebody as a supreme person, out of blindness, they do not know who is the supreme and who isn't, and they follow blindly people who claim to be the supreme, when in effect they're just nothing but hocus pocus people. Verse number 31. Fear is afraid of you, but you are fearful of Yashoda Mata when she tried to bind you with a rope. This is bewildering to me. So this is a very beautiful verse as well. So I'll just read the I'm trying to look for that particular verse. I think I've lost it. Oh, here. Verse number 33. Apare vasudevasya devakyam yarchito pyagat ajastvamasya shemaya vadaya cha suradishisham. Others say that since both Vasudeva and Devaki prayed for you, you have taken birth as their son. Undoubtedly you are unborn. Yet you take your birth for the welfare to kill those who are envious of the demigods. So both Vasudeva and Devaki, as well as Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda Maya, they were not ordinary personalities. They were pious personalities in the previous life, and they prayed to the Supreme Lord to allow Krishna to be born as their son. And in particular, if you read the pastimes of Yashoda Devi in the book by His Holiness Shri Ram Maharaj, Bhakti Janani, it describes the beautiful pastimes of Mother Yashoda, who she was in the previous birth, who Nanda Maharaj was in his previous birth, and also the relationship of how they managed, after performing so much pious activities, that they were able to take Krishna as their son. In fact, in many of the texts that comes up in the that particular book, it mentions that Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda Mai were actually greater personalities than even some of the demigods, because they were able to actually understand and relish the beautiful pastimes of Lord Krishna when he was a young boy. And here Queen Kunti is actually bewildered by the fact that when he broke the pots of yogurt, she saw Mother Yashoda chasing after him with a stick, and he started running away like anything, and he was so afraid of Mother Yashoda. And when Mother Yashoda eventually caught Krishna, Krishna started crying even more profusely, just like a little child. You may remember your own children, when you tell them off and you pretend to raise your hand or stick to them, they cry even more because out of fright, or perhaps feeling sort of compassion, saying that, oh, mother, father, please don't hit me. Can't you see I'm crying? I'm sorry. So that's exactly how Krishna was feeling. But of course, Yashoda Mai would never ever do anything to her darling son Krishna. Darling son Krishna meant more to her than her own life. But somehow or another, when Krishna was crying, Queen Kunti is actually finding this very bewildering, that even death personified is afraid of you, Krishna, but yet you were crying, you were showing tears of fear in front of Yashoda Maya. Such a beautiful pastime that is. So verses 32 to 34, It goes on to glorify the pious kings like Yudhishthira, to please their devotees like King Yadu, dear devotee King Yadu. And 33, as an answer to the prayers of Vasudeva and Devaki, which we just read, for the welfare of the world, to kill the Asuras, in response to Brahma's prayers to relieve the overburdened earth. Okay, so we sort of covered those verses. Sorry if I'm going too fast. I've still got another 20 verses to cover in this summary of chapter 8. Verse 35 reflects on the real reason for the Lord's appearance, to rejuvenate the process of Shravana, Smarana, Ahana, etc., so that the conditioned souls might be freed from the pangs of suffering, Klishyamanam, caused by action, karma, caused by material desires, karma, caused by ignorance. Still three more pages, so I may have to go slightly faster. So verse number 36, potency of the devotional process. Those who continuously hear, chant, and repeat your transcendental activities will take pleasure in others. So these two verses actually explain about the importance about carrying out devotional services, devotional practices, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Hajanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atma, Nivedanam. And then it carries on to say, to certainly see your lotus feet without delay, which alone can stop the repetition of birth and death. So if you remember, Queen Kunti, when she approached Krishna, she was afraid to see Krishna at the lotus feet. Normally, out of spiritual respect, when we see the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we see the lotus feet first and then work our way up to the thighs, to the chest, to the shoulders, then eventually to the lotus face, lotus smile, lotus eyes. And that's the way when we see the lordships and the altar, we should also see the lordships in the same way. But Queen Kunti, because she was an auntie and of course more senior in terms of like royal, I suppose, lineage, she was superior to Krishna in that way, but she felt a bit guilty seeing Krishna's lotus feet first. But also Krishna felt embarrassed that she would actually see his lotus feet first. So he was happy for her to see her face to face. So verse 37 to 43, an appeal for more association. Complete dependence. As you are leaving us, when all the kings are at enmity with us, we have no one else to protect us. Sorry, just 1 minute. She's worried, Queen Kunti Devi, and the Pandavas are worried that Krishna is actually leaving them. You know, who's going to protect us? Who's going to take care of us? You've been there all this time. Sorry, once again. Sorry, do excuse me. They're worried that Krishna is actually leaving them. Who's going to protect us? But Bhima and Arjuna are very powerful. The king is Dharma personified, and the Yadavas are your friends. You have no worries. So Krishna's actually pacifying them. Please do not worry. You know, you're going to be taken care of by the king. Is Dharma personified. Is actually he represents Dharmaraj himself, because he was always virtuous, always very honest, very pious in all his activities. Whatever he did, he followed according to the code of conduct by the royal throne and by Dharma itself, Sanatana Dharma. The fame and activities of the Pandavas and Yadus without you are like senses without the soul. So he actually explains here that the Pandavas are so superior in the way they've actually won this war on the basis of Krishna always taking care of them. And they're also going to be considered to be like remembered for time immemorial. So if you can imagine, this story took place 5,000 years ago, and we're still focusing on the beautiful parts of the stories of Krishna with the Pandavas. After you leave our kingdom that is marked with a sign of your feet will no longer glow, because of all the prosperity of this land is by glance alone. So once again, because they are worried that Krishna will leave, the lotus feet of his wherever he stepped on glows magnificently, but all the prosperity within the land will completely go away. His glance over the whole kingdom will also diminish slowly. And you can notice that when Krishna did actually leave the actual possums within the material world, then when Arjuna, he went to ask about Krishna, when I believe he went to Dwarka, and he found out that Krishna had actually left, and all his powers, his superior complexion had diminished slowly. He was able to be defeated by some dacoits, and the bow was actually just slipping from his hand. He wasn't able to aim properly at any of his targets no longer. He didn't have that dexterity of using the bow and arrow like he did when Krishna was there all the time protecting the Pandavas. So 39 to 40, sorry, beg your pardon, number 41. Sever my ties of family affection with the Pandavas and Yadavas, O Lord of the universe. Let me just read that. Verse 41, Lord of the universe, soul of the universe, a personality of the form of the universe, please therefore sever my tie of affection for my kinsmen, the Pandavas and the Vrishnis. So this is actually explaining about how eventually you want to lose any attachment to anyone associated with you, your family, your children, your parents. The idea is that you depend completely solely on the Supreme Lord and not on anybody else, because we know that ultimately death is going to come and approach each and every one of us. And at that time, we have to detach ourselves. Any feelings of attachments to anybody that we have will eventually allow us to come back to this material world that you see in the story like Jad Bharat. He was very affectionate to his dear, even though he was such a great personality. He gave up his kingdom, he gave up his wealth, but during the later part of his years, he was very attached to a deer, and in his next life, he became a deer himself, although he was very fortunate because of the spiritual attachment he had for the Supreme Lord. When he was a deer, he still remembered Krishna, and in his next life, he became Jad Bharat, who was considered to be to other people recognized as a dumb person, but actually he was a very intellectual person, and he had such a extensive discourse with a king who condemned him for his behavior. But then Jad Bharat was explaining to him, you calling me dumb, but actually, we're the soul within our hearts, and we're all eternal living entities of the Supreme Lord. So I think that's more or less covered everything. Is there any questions or comments anybody wants to ask? I do apologize. I know I went through the summary. I have to admit, on my own, I won't be able to fully appreciate or fully explain this particular beautiful chapter of Queen Kunti's prayers and Maharaj Yudhishthira. Anything anybody wants to add at all that I may have missed out? No, I really appreciate all of you listening to the classes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Vana Mataji.
Yes, Prabhu, you have, very beautifully explained the whole chapter. But it's you explain up to 43, right? But still we have 50 something. Yeah. So those verses, is it going to be explained or?
I can certainly explain them to you, but because I've gone over time, I didn't want to put anybody. But if anybody wants to stay on, they're welcome to stay on. But these are. I just realized now that you mentioned it. Thank you, Krishna Vana Mataji. There are one more page. It's verses 45 to 52. Perhaps this is these are the last few verses that you've been reading on the Srimad Bhagavatam, Chad. It's the interactions with Maharaj Yudhishthira. As you recall, Maharaj Yudhishthira was very, very disappointed at his behavior, for his discipline of not understanding the full potential behind the war of the Mahabharata. You recall that I mentioned about how many soldiers there are in an Akshohini army, and there were 18 in total, 7 to the Pandava side and 11 to the Kaurava side. But also at the same time, somewhere I've read or somewhere I've heard that almost 660 million people had died, and he felt very guilty. He felt responsible that because he actually allowed this war to take place, then so many people have died, which they could have been saved if he wasn't so worried about accumulating any wealth and accumulating any land, accumulating any status. He would have been happy. But of course, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he actually told him, whatever you didn't do it for a wrong cause. You did because I had told you to fight. It was because of my reasoning that you had to fight for Dharma, you had to fight for righteousness, you had to uphold Dharma. When you look at the book of the Bhagavad Gita, many years ago, it was actually condemned by the Russians because they felt that the Bhagavad Gita was a case where people use it as an excuse to kill other people. But actually, no, it's an excuse, a spiritual excuse to protect yourself. Just like Krishnavani Mataji, you probably remembered when we were fighting the campaign to save Krishna, we were actually trying to put ourselves in danger, fighting with the police, going to prison, being prosecuted. 35,000 people walking on that march. That it was actually in March 1994. So many devotees were taken away. What were we doing it for? We didn't do it for our own particular reason. We did it for righteousness, for a spiritual higher purpose, to protect the temple from being closed. It was a very wrong sort of decision by the government to close the temple, and they shouldn't have done that. But it showed how the spiritual connection from one brother and sister within the community all got together and protected this temple from being closed. So they'll go in history forever, and Krishna will always remember every single person who actually came to save the temple from being closed. So it's almost like a Mahabharata war for us. Of course, it goes on to say that Maharaj Yudhishthira was lamenting, seeing the killing of the men. He cannot understand that if he performed the Ashmaveda Yagya, that would not really counteract any of the silver reactions. But Lord Krishna pacifies him in so many ways, because although he feels that the women, the friends, the brahmanas, brothers, gurus, they were all killed, that he will actually never be relieved from hell itself. He felt that Duryodhana was actually protecting the citizens already when he was in charge. But of course, that was because he was very concerned about his own well-being. He had to sort of be nice to the citizens so they could actually protect his own kingdom, to avoid the Pandavas from taking over that kingdom itself. So I hope that answers the remaining part of the last few verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Is there any other comments
Yes,
at all?
thank you very much, Prabhu.
So I do once again apologize if I made any mistakes. I know I've read most of it from this particular book, because due to my lack of qualification, knowledge, I would have had to spend at least 2 to 3 months to fully understand this full chapter so I could explain it. But Krishna is so merciful that he's provided us through Srila Prabhupada these wonderful books that allows us to connect and understand and go deeply into the beautiful pastimes. And it's not just like a story, but actually an understanding for each and every one of us to follow these particular principles that Queen Kunti had been going through, the Pandavas had been going through, and how those same stories can apply to us in our day-to-day life, where we're coming through difficulties in our life, when we're coming through distress in our lives, how we approach the Supreme Lord, always thinking of the Lord, whatever the situation is, and not being attached to material activities, detaching ourselves at a time when we come into a inevitable point of time in life, which is death. So thank you very much, everyone. I kindly pray for your blessings once again that I may be able to do another class, and also by the mercy of my spiritual master, Bhakti Swami and Srila Prabhupada, if I could offer my respects to everybody. Vanchakalpatarubhyasya kripa sindhubhya cha patitana pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Kvinkuti
Jai.
Devi ki jai, Maharaj Yudhishthira Maharaj ki jai. Thank you,
Krishna
everyone.
Govind Prabhu ki jai.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Prabhu,
you.
for wonderful class. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you very much.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Krishna Govinda Prabhu.
Thank you, Prajatanaya Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.